What's up, everybody? This is Chris Nichols, and you're listening to an episode of the Nichols&Dimez Show featuring Liam Eriksson. Enjoy. Liam, what's going on, man?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Good. Dude, I'm glad we got connected.
Yeah. No. Thanks for having me, brother. I know it's a very small world, to say the least.
It really is, and it turns out we have so many connections in common and friends, and some of who are even actually named some of your products, right?
Yes, which is even weirder.
And I'm stoked to get into that. But
yeah.
Let me give everyone a quick intro on you first, and
Please.
then we'll get to your story, which I'm stoked to talk about. So, guys, I'm here today with Liam Eriksson, who is co-founder and CEO of Guy Fawkes, which is a luxury cologne and candles business. The company's mission is to eliminate exclusivity in the world of fragrance by focusing on premium quality, affordability, and convenience. Before embarking on his entrepreneurial path, Liam worked in the tech industry. He is originally from the Bay Area, California, and is currently based in San Diego. Okay.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out, man. So we've got a lot of overlap in
Yes.
our stories. Being from the Bay Area and the tech, and so I'm very interested in starting off there. I want to understand, what was your life like growing up in the Bay Area, more so in the sense of what made you entrepreneurial, right?
Sure.
And then I'm particularly interested in your transition from doing tech, which is pretty much the same stuff, in my what I do, right, in my career, and how you transitioned out of that to found Guy Fawkes. So why don't you start off maybe with your background growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from the Roy, aka Gilroy, California.
Yep.
Shout the fuck out. It's a small. If you don't know Gilroy, it's the garlic capital of the world.
Yep.
And I always rep Gilroy a lot harder than I should. Maybe at times. I don't know. I'm really proud of where I'm come from. It's a very, very small farm town community. It's the southernmost city in Silicon Valley. So last city on the 101 in Santa Clara County. And so growing up technically in the valley of Silicon Valley was amazing. And I think my town had a lot of cool things to offer. That really weren't that tech related, we're in the shadows of San Jose. We're the shadows of
more of a
Campbell.
farm town, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hardworking farm town, half Hispanic, half white. Is very, a lot of people, it really didn't matter how much money you came from. It mattered who you were as a person, which I thought was just amazing. And as a kid growing up, that's all you really care about, right? You care about if I like Chris or not, or if he's a good guy. And so I'm really prideful of it. And so every time someone asks me where I'm from, I always try to normalize Gilroy. It's not normal. And it's funny, someone mentioned it prior, but it's like, I own a men's fragrance company. Yeah. And I'm from the smelliest city in all of California. So it's like, it's a very full circle moment. I think we'll definitely draw onto that a bit more. But
I love that.
No, it was amazing. It was amazing growing up. To answer your question about entrepreneurship, I don't have any entrepreneurs in my family. It was definitely something instilled in me as a kid. I think you talked to other entrepreneurs about it as well, of like, what was the inception story? Yeah. Honestly, man, mine was like, I didn't come from money. I came from middle class, and I would go to my friends' houses that their parents did X, X, and X. And I always was like, man, like, I really want to have like more money than I grew up with. Yeah. And I think the path to that are obviously amazing other professions. But in my brain, I was always like, oh, why don't I just start my own business kind of thing? And I'm sure it'll materialize as we get along in our conversation, but I think if you had obviously all of our memories are a little bit vague, right? Yeah. I love to think about like me as a little kid being like a lemonade stand. I'm an entrepreneur, but it certainly probably wasn't as easy as that. And I think during our conversation, I think we can kind of get to more of the pillars of me becoming one, but certainly I knew I wanted to, I was attracted by money, number one. Without sounding like super vain, it was something that I just didn't have growing up. And I knew a trajectory to that could be a business maybe.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And probably, I'm curious how much of an impact did having the Silicon Valley so close to where you grew up, or basically sort of in the valley, how much of an impact did that have on you with the innovation going on and the entrepreneurship there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really think growing up, nothing. Frankly, like Gilroy, I mean, we'd play schools from San Jose and Los Gatos
Yeah.
and Campbell and you name it, Cupertino.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, I think us growing up, we didn't really know what coding was or like how, what the Silicon Valley really offered.
Sure.
You'd be like, oh, Chris's dad works on computers,
Yeah.
right? He works at eBay. And we'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But we didn't realize, I think, especially growing up, we didn't realize like the impact it actually had in our overall community, especially since my parents don't work in tech.
Yeah.
And so growing up, I didn't have an impact. Certainly college and post-college, for sure.
Yeah.
Which we
Okay.
could also get into.
Absolutely. No, good transition. So, okay, so it really kind of happened gradually later on
Yeah.
in your, I guess, your youth, going into college. What did you study in college?
Yeah, so I went to Harvard of the West, aka Sonoma State.
Yep.
So very much, very much like Gilroy, where like I gotta rep it, you know.
Yep.
I'm very, very thankful and humble of my roots, or my humble roots, but definitely loved it. It was awesome. I actually met my co-founder there. So if you don't know Sonoma State, it's a small liberal arts college in Northern California in wine country. So not too far from Napa. Sonoma has better wine. We all say it. And was there for 4 years, majored in business. Dare I say, didn't learn too many things about business in undergrad. And then moved to San Francisco, and that's kind of when the story starts.
Got it. All right, and so you got into tech in San Francisco.
Yeah.
What kind of, you were doing sales?
Yeah, so I, being a Bay boy, for obviously from the South Bay, go up to the North Bay for college, and had no intention of being in the Bay Area. I wanted to move to LA or San Diego.
Okay.
And so I was interviewing for a company in San Francisco, and they were saying, hey, this is your intro interview. And if you get the job, or if we want to move you forward, you will get interviewed in San Diego or LA, wherever they had opportunities.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, bet. Like, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And so I interviewed, and it went really well. And they were like, I talked to he was my future boss, but I talked to him about it. But he really wanted me in San Francisco. But he's like, hey, man, like, LA and San Diego, they're just really competitive markets. Like, we'd really want you to be in San Francisco. And I was like, what, a 21-year-old? You're just like, oh, you want me? Like, hell yeah. Like, I was like, oh, you're going to pay me a salary? Like, I worked a full-time job since I was 16, right? So, like me getting paid, like, fucking $8 an hour, right? At Starbucks or, like, a hotel I worked at. And I was like, oh, my gosh, like, I'm flattered.
Yeah.
And so I ended up taking that job in San Francisco. And it very much was a very pivotal moment in my life. I was like, I don't know, I'll be here for a couple of years. I'll move to SoCal. I think as a Northern California kid, Southern California always had an allure, right? Had better weather, more opportunities, the beach, those things that maybe like the Bay Area didn't. And so, then I started San Francisco, or my job in San Francisco, right in the heart of the FIDI. And I was like, oh man, like this is it. You know? And this is 2014, which is like,
different time.
Oh my gosh, like an amazing time in San Francisco to say the least.
I remember. Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing.
Were you there at the same time?
Similar time, around those years for sure. And I was working in downtown as well.
No way. Yeah.
A few different companies. So I know exactly what you mean. It was very electric. Right?
It was the best, dude.
Yeah.
It was the best. I love San Francisco. I love past tense, and I love currently this city. It as much shit as it gets. I absolutely adore it.
Right. Yeah, man. Okay, so then let's talk about your experience in the corporate world and then the transition getting out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is like where my real entrepreneur journey starts. And so I was working for a recruiting agency in tech. And so I would get people jobs for like Wells Fargo corporate, like to work on like their .com site or whatever. So that was my first foray into obviously just like my first job, like my first real big boy job. And then also like really understanding like the dynamics and nuances of like the San Francisco tech culture or just San Francisco culture in general. I think tech gets kind of loosely thrown a lot and maybe like in derogatory and negative ways. However, I didn't really have that experience. I thought it was just an amazing opportunity to be like, oh yeah, like I'm hiring people for a major company, and I had other clients as well. But it was a really good experience for me to just honestly like cement yourself in a new city. Didn't know anyone. I knew like maybe 2 people. And then that job really propelled me to actually subsequently name some of the guys. We'll get into that, but names will come up later on in this conversation that I met at that first job. And to this day are really influential. So I worked at that company for 2 years, and then I knew I wanted to like work for a startup. You just see it. Some of my clients were startups. Like, dude, I had to wear a suit every day with a tie, right? Like the company that I worked for was based in Atlanta, very traditional, like businessman.
Sure.
Like we had to show up at 8 a.m.
Yep.
ready to go, clean shaven. I mean, I can't really grow a beard anyway, but like it was very conservative.
Yeah.
And I would go into meetings to these cool startups, and they'd be like, dude, I look like I'm 10. And so they'd be like, dude, like you don't need to wear this suit with the tie. Like it's all good.
Yeah, that's funny.
And so I got my first like inkling of like, oh wow, like I don't need to work in this traditional world. Very much like your first job is very much like your first girlfriend, right? It's like you don't really know until you're kind of getting into it.
That's a great comparison, actually.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh wow, like there's other jobs that are like this. And then I think I started getting more itchy in terms of like, all right, Liam, like you're a smart guy. You're in sales, right? You're in tech sales.
Yeah.
You can kind of copy and paste that. I saw other friends leave to other companies. So long story short, after 2 years, I ended up going to my first startup. It was a Series B startup. It was actually a really good idea. It was called HomeSuite. And it was essentially Airbnbs for long-term rentals.
Cool.
So like, say that you were flying out to opening up the Dallas market for your job. Instead of you staying in a hotel or whatever, you could stay into our properties for longer than 30 days.
Got it.
So it was a really good idea. We had raised a ton of money. I think upwards of like 20 plus million.
Nice.
Had like, I want to say like 60 full-time employees.
Okay, I was just gonna ask.
Yeah, and I was like their number one sales guy or one of the top,
Oh, cool.
Which was cool. And then worked there for a year, and then one day we walked into work, and the company folded. Ooh. We ran out of money. And I was like, damn. And that was like hustle culture. Like that was like, we worked on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Like it was great, right? Like we were making pretty good money, and like the company was awesome. Like I worked with really, really cool, different people than my first job, which was really nice. Like there were, I would say some of them were really close, but like they weren't like my best friends. They were really good work colleagues. And it was just really awesome to experience like startup world, which I didn't really have any experience with. You hear those stories, but then you're like, oh wow, like this is a startup. And so that really got me itchy for like more entrepreneurial stuff, for sure.
So that's so interesting though, because the company folded, but yet you were still so excited about the idea of having your own startup, starting your own company.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting to me, because me being in tech, I've kind of seen it all as well, and you know, seen that happen to companies, and it can be pretty traumatic for people who are working at those companies, especially when it's small, right? When there's not a whole lot of support for employees that might have to go, right, if things aren't going to continue with the company. So how were you so motivated by the startup idea when things like that were happening and the business folded?
Yeah, I think this is like probably one of the most pivotal moments in my life, really. The reason why I got excited about it, Chris, is because I looked at the CEO, who is a Stanford MBA, like University of Michigan undergrad. Yeah. Never really like had a startup job, right? Was a consultant or whatever, a vague title. Not to bash on him in any way, but it really gave me the confidence where I was like, dude, if this guy could just burn $20 million, I'm like, I could kind of probably figure this out, you know? It really gave me the utmost confidence of understanding, number one, the organization structure of a startup, and number two, of like the whole purpose of making a business is honestly to like hopefully be profitable. And if you can't be profitable with a really good idea, not shame on you, maybe it's like wrong place, wrong time, but I definitely think we executed in a bad way. So I was more so motivated, being like, oh, like you could actually do this.
Interesting. So you actually watched what happened, firsthand experience, and saw how you could do it better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a naive, at that point I was a naive 24-year-old where I was like, oh yeah, you could figure this out, right? You're annoying sales guy. But I didn't. I think the term sales guy too is also really derogatory. Like you're a sales guy. I hate when people say like I'm in sales.
Sure.
I'm like, all right. You know, because like especially in SF, like we'd be like, of course you're like a sales guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, like I have a brain. I could like this is how I make my money, I guess. But more so like that level of shock really instilled like a lot of motivation. I was actually working on the idea while I was at that company. Yeah. So it wasn't like the idea came after that. It was like something I was actually working on.
Got it. Okay. That's interesting. So the startup environment, obviously it was appealing. So I have a question about the CEO. You said he had a pretty big impact on you. Was he a younger guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, younger.
So that's much more relatable, right? You have a younger CEO.
Yeah.
You see how you can be that guy in the not too far future.
Yeah.
And you also probably have more validation when you look at yourself in the mirror that, hey, you're capable of making decisions that he's making and potentially even doing better.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to seeing some CEO who has decades of experience, and then you're kind of looking up to him, right? And you can't really compare.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
completely.
that's an interesting angle there. All right. So tell me, how long into this employment at this company did you start working on this idea, which was Guy Fawkes, right?
Yeah. Hopefully this isn't really a clean chronological order for you, but
no worries.
So the idea of Guy Fawkes, I don't know if you want me to get into that now or wait, because it actually occurred to me in college. So it was my senior year in college when I came up with that idea.
Okay. So let me try this. I'm curious about your experience becoming interested in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And then I want to get into the idea of Guy Fawkes specifically.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, did you know in your head in college and as you did those first 2 jobs in the corporate world that, hey, one day I'm going to do my own thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. But it just became more real, especially when you were working at the startup.
There you go. Yeah.
Got it.
I think like it was always like in my head. And then after that happened, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, you should probably do this. Because I would say like the level of like comparison, obviously, you're going to have naturally with like, I don't even want to talk about that CEO. I think he's a super smart guy. And I'm very blessed to even be employed by him, to be honest.
Sure.
But like, I think it gave me the wherewithal to be like, oh, okay, like you kind of know how this works.
Right.
For as naive as you are. And I think you could probably think of something cool that like you could hopefully be your own boss and maybe have employees one day.
Sure.
So yeah, it definitely implanted me of being like, okay, you should probably get serious about like starting a business soon.
Okay.
Especially in our world of tech, dude. Like in San Francisco, like it was either you start your own company or work for like Uber or like something dope that like you love, like and you truly like wear their merch. Remember walking down the Fide-Eye? Everyone would have their own like, it was like Greek sorority letters, like Patagonia jackets, and like it was a badge of honor. And I was like, man, what a cool idea if like you could just like have a company like that and you have your employees like be stoked to take Muni every day and like walk through the Fide-Eye and then see it. Yeah. And it's so normal to us, right? But like it's certainly not normal.
For real. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. So let's now talk about Guy Fawkes then. How did that idea come to you? And just to give a little precursor of the mission statement you have and what you and I talked about before the podcast, the mission is to eliminate exclusivity in the world of fragrance by focusing on premium quality, affordability, and convenience. So you mentioned something about the Macy's experience, the conventional experience, right, with Cologne, and how you were on a mission to basically change that. So you tell the story how you like to tell it, but I'm definitely curious in understanding what your mission is in terms of differentiating Guy Fawkes from that traditional experience.
Sure. Yeah. The story goes in 2014, I was a broke college student. I was a senior in college and I was a business major. I'm sure all business majors, or just honestly anyone does this, but like you think of business ideas. And for mine, I was very fortunate that any ideas I would come up with, my best friend Grant, he was 3 years older than me. And he was my big bro in my fraternity. I would like just like text him or like call him and be like, man, I thought of this idea. And so one day I wore cologne. I worked at a hotel. I wore cologne probably like all through college and even in high school probably. But I wasn't like the guy that smelled super like strong. I just like more like sprayed like once or twice and like got a little more confident. I just knew I liked it. I don't think I ever bought fragrance for myself. I think I was always gifted it. So I remember going in senior year, I had a bottle, I ran out, and I always knew I liked wearing it before work or going out and you name it. And I ran out and I was broke. And so I think my ex-girlfriend bought it for me or something. And so where do you go when you run out of fragrance in 2014? You probably go to Macy's, right? Like you go to the mall. And so I drive to the mall and I remember walking into Macy's and I just get sprayed with a ton of different fragrances. I don't know shit about fragrances. Right? I'm like, I just know I like it or I don't. And hopefully I get compliments maybe. That's kind of like the cherry on top. And so the lady was super nice, but I remember the whole experience being pretty nuts. So nuts that I was like, I would consider myself like, my friends would be like, hey, Liam, where did you get those pants? Or like, where did you get that jacket? And like, I'd probably say like, I'm not going to say I'm a huge tastemaker, but I will say that like, I feel confident to tell my friends advice when it comes to like maybe buying things like whether it be accessories or like clothing. And I was like, wow, if that experience sucked for me, I wonder how it is for like all my other guys out there that run into the same issue. So the bottle of fragrance itself is so ubiquitous. every guy typically has one that he's been gifted over the years. People know what it is, but no one knows what's in it. No one knows who makes it.
Yeah.
No one knows how to wear it. So I remember walking back from my car, and I walked out of there with a $120 bottle of something I couldn't pronounce. And I was like, I can't afford this. Like, that's like 10 meals in college.
Yeah.
I, number one, can't afford this. And number two, that sucked, right? It really did. And I walked back into the mall, and to the chagrin of that nice saleswoman, she's like, "You returning it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sorry, like broke college kid."
Yeah.
And so, I remember that whole experience, and I was like, I remember going on Amazon, and it was like $85. So I saved like $40
for the same one.
For the same one, and that's still expensive, in my brain. But I was like, I could wait. Amazon back then, it's so funny to think about. Took like a week, right? I was like, I could wait a week or whatever. I know it's a long time, but save the money. And on the drive home, I remember that experience being so like I couldn't stop thinking about it, really. And this was like the first like real big idea I had, and this was 2014. So I called my future co-founder. He doesn't even wear cologne, and I was like, dude, buying cologne sucks. He's like, I don't even wear it. He's like, what do you do? Like, what do you do about it? And that idea resonated with me so much so that every job I started in San Francisco, I always came back to it. I didn't have a name for it. I was like, man, that cologne idea. Like, and I would start educating myself more and more about cologne. And as I did that, I realized only 3 companies own the entire or majority of the entire fragrance market worldwide. And so like, Warby Parker got really big in 2014. They probably started direct to consumer, if we had to credit anyone. They went up against Luxottica, who owned everything. And so very much copy and paste that with fragrances, and people don't know that. And so Gucci, Versace, Prada, Dior, those aren't owned by those companies. They just license out their name to like Coty, L'Oreal, and Estee Lauder.
Interesting.
And so they just price fix and kind of do whatever they want, which I respect, right? Like, I'm like, hey, like no harm, no foul. People love it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. But I was like, there's not a fragrance company that any of my guys could relate with. You don't relate with Versace. Like, you just got it because your sister got it for you, your mom.
Right.
And I was like, well, how about we create how about number one, we make the buying fragrances as easy as possible.
Yeah.
And number two, why don't we be that most relatable fragrance company there is? And number three, make it like at a price that is fair, rather than getting gouged. And so that was the inception point. And all the subsequent years was just research of figuring out, number one, if I should do it, and number two, how to do it. And those companies that I just aforementioned were very impactful of that, where I could just like honestly like see how how a company operates and manages and goes about their life. I didn't have any of that in college, and so that idea stuck with me. I always say like a virus, it's like it was just in the back of my head all the time, like it was incepted forever. So that was the idea. That was like the mission of Guy Fawkes. And obviously that changed throughout the years, but that was it pretty much. Make it easy, make it affordable, and make it super relatable.
That's very interesting. So on that first piece, the easy part, make it easy. I want to talk about that for a second. And the pain that stands out to me, obviously the affordability is obvious, right? Some of these colognes are very expensive. You don't really know what you're paying for in many cases, right? Compared to all the different other brand names out there that are apparently owned by just a few bigger companies, right? But the easy part, is that because it's so overwhelming with all the different options, and it's all the people in Macy's, for example, are all coming at you and saying all these different things, and you don't really know why this is more valuable than the other?
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
I mean, you're hitting it spot on. And it's amazing because you are a consumer of it, probably. And so you kind of relate and empathize.
Right.
Yeah, it's exactly what you just mentioned. You're overwhelmed by a plethora of options. 2, you're not educated about like what you are looking for.
Yeah.
And 3, like it's hysterical just to even see the marketing materials for like, you just see Adam Driver naked with like a horse next to him. And you're like, yeah, Burberry hero. Like I'm totally going to rock that tomorrow. Right. I was like, it was like comedic to me where I was like, okay, well, why don't, there's so many awesome clothing brands out there. There's so many awesome like normal brands. Like why is fragrances always so avant-garde? Why is it so pretentious? All these things and all these barriers. And so, to do the easy part, I was like, this is the flagship of Guy Fawkes, and this is the whole reason why we started the company. Why don't we make it as easy as possible for a guy to experience fragrance from their own home? And so all you have to do is get our starter kit. And so our starter kit is this little box. It includes 6 of our best sellers and a code in it to redeem for your full-size bottle. So you get to try all 6 at home, because honestly, fragrances change on your body. I thought that was super cap when I first started. I was like, that's such a marketing ploy. Like, it couldn't be more true. It's super true. I didn't know that. Like 8 years ago. And so I was like, well, how about Chris gets to try this on at home? He gets to wear him to work, wear him to dates, count his compliments. And whenever he's ready, he just uses his little code to get his full-size bottle. So it's try before you buy kind of thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Like, so I was like, why doesn't everyone just do this? Like, blind buying is very hard. I get at the mall, like, you can kind of make a good decision because you can smell it, but like, you don't know what it's like on your skin. So I was like, I know millennial guys like me, like, don't want to just invest $120 on something maybe they won't like when they get home. Might as well give them the option. And so that was like the core of Guy Fawkes is the starter kit. Like, try at home, redeem it later kind of thing. And so like that's where we really took off in terms of like a real like advantage of us in the fragrance world, because no one was doing that.
Right. Yeah. Massive differentiator right there in terms of the experience, the buy-in experience, because you really get to you get a taste literally of what you're actually going to buy.
For sure.
Right. Wow. And then you can try. So may I open this box here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just for the audio, he's got a cool black box with the logo on it, Guy Fawkes. It says sample set on it. And I'm just opening it up here to get an understanding of how big or small these samples are. And they're pretty much just like the samples, just like a mini lipstick thing, right? And
so they'll last you like, that's probably like 10 to 14 sprays. So like it lasts you like at least 3 days.
At least, Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so and how you have 6 in here, 6 different flavors. Or
exactly.
Fragrances rather. Cool. Okay. And so, all right, so that's super helpful in understanding how you can, because there's other businesses out there this is reminding me of. Like, I think I forget the names of them, but I know there is one big business in particular that would send you clothes. Right, it would send you, like, you would
Stitch Fix.
I think Stitch Fix was
SF too.
Yeah, that's right. I think they were one of the pioneers in this idea as well.
For sure. Warby Parker did that with the virtual or with the try-ons. So you could try on the glasses. Like, if they're not prescription, but at least you could see what they look like on your face. I also say, like, I'm selling the hardest products to ever sell on the internet. Like, fragrances are like they're probably bought in least amount. Like, you probably buy. Cars are probably bought at a higher rate online than fragrances are. I'd probably say supplements are probably bought at like an 8 times rate than things that you ingest in your body. So the whole bringing fragrances to the internet thing, in my brain, I was like, this is a great idea. And then I just didn't realize how hard it would be. Yeah,
that's so interesting. Okay, so I'm curious, how did you determine pricing? So how do you market the different values or the what you're getting from each different product, from each different name of cologne that you have, compared to going into the store and getting, how do you get away from this conventional thing of, I don't know what the difference is between this Versace cologne, this Gucci one, this Dior, whatever, this is overwhelming. So how are you being very specific and, hey, you're getting this with this one versus this one?
Sure. Yeah, I think I could break it down into 2 different parts. The first part is, how do you make fragrance? And so, like, where do you go? And so what I realized, I ended up actually taking another job after that company folded at another really awesome startup. And then I got my like first real look at like a really good executed startup, like Series D. Like, it was very dialed and awesome experience for me to experience. Shout out Honeybook real quick. They're
okay. There we go.
But so I worked there for 4 years, but all the while I was trying to figure out how to actually make fragrances. And like, I'm sure you talk to other entrepreneurs, it's like, where do you start? You Google a ton.
Of course.
And so what I realized, and this is why there's not that many fragrance brands in the world, is because it's so hard. And like, I'm not saying that as like deceiving word, but like, it is so difficult, because like me making this t-shirt today was pretty easy. Like, I just get like a blank and I send it to a screen printer, and like, guess what? I have my t-shirt, right? For fragrances, so I just make cold calls. Like, I'm pretty comfortable on the phone. So I'd be like, hey, X company, I found you on Google. It says that you guys make fragrances. Keep in mind, I don't know anything about making fragrances. And it was really nice, because like that whole community is pretty like tight knit, and like they would just give me advice. They'd be like, hey man, like the minimums that you're looking for are like crazy low. But here's what I would recommend. So what I found out is that there's like perfume labs that can make fragrances. And then I would actually get like my glass bottles and sprayers and caps from a different supplier. I'd get packaging from a different supplier. All these things. So I realized that this whole supply chain is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And so I actually worked with, they call it turnkey, if you're familiar with that term. It just means like you just talk to one person and they could do all of these things for you. This was like the worst but best decision of my life, is that like I went to a turnkey person and they almost completely bankrupted us, and they were terrible, and we'll get into those stories later. But like, to answer your initial question about how to make fragrances, I was able to team up with a really cool fragrance lab that was down to do a minimum order with us. And in my naive ass, I was like, we should come out with 6 fragrances. Like, you know, like 6 seems like a really good number to like make sure that you like all of them, right? In retrospect, I'd probably come out with like 3, but like 6. And so I started working with them directly to figure out, okay, cool, Liam, you don't know anything about fragrances. What do you like about them? So what I spent my time doing actually is after work, I would actually get off Muni at SS bus. I'd get off in downtown and I'd walk over to Sephora, and I would pretend I was buying things, and someone would always help me. And at Sephora, you can get like a very small sample for free. And so I would just smell like by myself, and I'd write notes in my phone. And like the saleswomen, they'd be super nice. They'd be like, hey, do you want any free samples? I'm like, yeah, I would. And like, I'd be able to try like all these random mass produced fragrances that I personally enjoyed, you know? Like there's nothing wrong with the fragrances that are made in, at the time. I think there's definitely some chemicals that they should chill out on, and I think they're hopefully doing a better job about. But it wasn't like the fragrances sucked. I just really wanted to make some that like I resonated with, and then like you would never be that guy, you know? We always say that, our team, like, don't be that guy. I want to make fragrances that you could wear every day, that were light enough and like experiential, like where you didn't feel uncomfortable in an elevator or in an Uber. And so I found all these, like, just call them 6 fragrances that I essentially started like the skeletons of. And so I talk about fragrance development very much like how you're making clothing. So like I like that shirt that you're wearing, Chris, because it's green, and like I like the cut. It goes around your biceps a little bit more, and it's made out of like a poly cotton blend.
Appreciate it.
That's how you start it, right? Like so you have a base, and I'm like, but I kind of want to make it like a bigger box of cut. I want to change the material a little more to make it thicker. Like, and I want to change the color, right? So fragrances are very much like that, where you could look at something where you're not reinventing the wheel, and you'd be like, I love Gucci Guilty because of these notes. I like Versace Eros because of these notes. And I think that just helped self-educate me of when I went to that lab of being like, hey, Liam, what do you want? Rather than me being like, I think I like these things. I like became really confident in like fragrance development in terms of like what I think would be good. And then they were able to give me like V1s and then V2s and then V25s of the first 6 fragrances that I named after my 6 best friends.
Okay. All right, so that's a great transition. But before we transition into the naming of the products and marketing in general, how do you describe a smell? How do you know what I mean? Like because that was originally the question I asked, and you talked about, okay, how you went and figured out what the supply chain was going to be, how you sourced everything. You know, you talked a little bit about the chemicals. That was interesting as well. And it sounds like you have this sustainable, environmental friendly aspect to how you make these colognes, right? In terms of, you know, staying away from certain chemicals that might be bad for the environment. So can you expand on that? How you actually describe a smell that fits with the brand you were going for?
Yeah, for sure. I think fragrances, especially, and this comes down to the relatability aspect. I think any like, dare I say, like French type of industries, whether they be wine, beauty, fashion, fragrances. I think we always have that avant-garde approach where you're like coffee, for example. It's like, this tastes like tobacco and hints of honey and aromatic spices. And I think a lot of it is cap. Like, I'd be like, no, you're just lying, really. And I think that's the relatability aspect that I knew I couldn't tell you, Chris, as my friend. I'd be like, hey man, doesn't this smell like this, this, and this? So I got really literal, where I could be like, okay, yes, this does smell like lime. This is very fresh. And what I realized is that when you tell a story about fragrances, you, as just a general consumer, can understand it more. So instead of me being like, this smells like you're walking in like the Parisian gardens on like a summer day. Like I could be like, I could just be way more relatable.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, hey, this scent, like, example for the Del Mar scent for our candles. It's like, it really does smell like a really bright San Diego beach day.
Yeah.
With you have coconut water in your hand, have lemons, like it just super bright, citrus, aquatic. You can kind of like colorize your brain to be like, oh, okay, I could understand more of a relatable atmosphere rather than maybe this exotic place. And you can get really granular and using notes that like I think people are really like familiar with, like rosemary smells like rosemary, like you probably used it like in cooking. And so making that more accessible and approachable was one of the biggest things as I'm writing these formulations out.
That's well described. That's very interesting, and definitely helps differentiate your cologne versus all the ones out there that people are usually familiar with. Okay, so that's sick. Let's transition to the naming of the products. You mentioned that they're named after your best friends. Each cologne has a different name, right? How did this come alive?
Yeah, that's a good question. Everyone always asks me that too. Do you remember MySpace?
Yeah.
Do you remember making your top 8?
Yeah, I never had MySpace, but
really?
I get the idea.
So in MySpace, that was like crazy. It was super contentious. Like, you could make a top 8 and like say that you had a sleepover.
Like your best friends.
Yeah, your best friends.
Yeah.
And so say that you had a sleepover at like some other friend's house. Like their stock goes up. Like you guys are more homies, and like you move like Nick from 3 to 4, like 4 to 3 or whatever.
You ranked your friends online.
Yeah,
That's
it was
crazy.
really weird. It was really weird. But I more so like that idea like was hilarious to me. But the idea that stuck with me was like, I can't pronounce any of these bottles. Like Sauvage, like what does that mean? Like, you know, like all these French terms or Italian terms that like are just straight up marketing ploys.
Yeah.
You know, as you get older, you like just realize it's just like very like aesthetic.
Sure.
And so I really wanted to honor my friends and my family are like the most important things to me. And I really stay in contact with so many of them.
Yeah.
And I wanted to honor them. Really honor them. And I was like, what better thing to do than come out with names that are just named after my best friends? Like, it was frankly a no-brainer. Like, I was never going to think of anything else. Even when I was making the first packaging, I was like, yep, no, it's going to be my best friends.
Wow.
Like, and I was able to come out with 6 of those.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what are those names?
So the first 6 are Michael, who's my brother, Grant, who's my co-founder, Hermes, Hefe, his real name's Jeff. Those 2 worked at the first company I ever worked at. JP, one of my best friends from my hometown, and Mara, one of my best friends from my hometown. So
got it.
6 dudes, all 6 unique individuals, and I was like, all right, like this is a really good 6 to come out with. Like I was so stoked to show them, like, because they had no idea.
Yeah.
So when I would come out with like the first bottle, they were like, what? And like I would give it to them in person and stuff. It was really cute. So yeah, man, I just do it like the whole reason why we like I do what I do is like, honestly, just to hopefully make my friends proud and my family proud, and like what better way to honor them than make a fucking cologne after them.
Yeah, well, that's super noble just in terms of your personal mission around it and what you're going for, and I think it's really relatable for a lot of people, and they say, okay, you know, this is just a real guy I can relate to who has his friends, and he's honoring them in the form of his business and the products that he's selling. What do you think, there's anything more to that experience that people have or that reaction that people have when they see these colognes with these guys' names on them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I talk about it with my team of like, does it hinder us at times?
Right.
I guess I don't know the answer to that question. All I know is that I'm stoked on it. And then we have 10 fragrances. So we have, in order, we came out with Preston, Tyler, Nelson, and Vince. And it's sick because for those 4, we were able to like surprise them, like straight up surprise. They had no idea. Like I took Preston out to dinner, who you actually know personally.
Sure.
Nelson, we gave it to him right before he got married, like literally like before we got to the car to go do a ceremony. Like we gave it to him. Tyler, it was during his birthday. Like I gave it to him right before a concert.
Yeah.
And Vince, we took him out to like drinks in Newport. And it was just so amazing, obviously, to just get that like visceral reaction of them like really surprised.
Sure.
And honestly, it's frankly like cool that like we could kind of make our own rules. Like there's not really anyone telling us otherwise.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously this initial reaction from the guys you named them after, there's probably an amazing story for each one.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to understand how you translate that experience to your customer base, right?
Yeah.
And I think a big way to talk about that is going to be your marketing strategy overall and your content that you create. Because your Instagram page, Guy Fawkes, has got some cool videos, and the website's amazing with different pictures. And
oh, thanks.
it looks like you and your friends and having a good time together in a bunch of different ways, right? Can you describe what your marketing brain is behind your strategy overall?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our whole goal is to be the most relatable fragrance company in the world. And we consume content. It's really easy to make content for things that we know, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it'd be weird if like we were selling, I always tell Kevin and Grant this, is like, if we sold like diapers or something, you know, or like a woman's product. It's great that we are our demographic. So we want to consume we want to create things that we would love, that our friends would love as well. So honestly, it makes our job super easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not gonna have like a dude shirtless, like with an 8-pack, like spraying bottles, but like we will have like really cool, like more artistic stuff that maybe you could relate with. But yeah, we're just super real. Like if you read all of our copy, like on our website, like all of our descriptions of our fragrances are pretty like just real. At the beginning, like they were almost too real, where I was like where we didn't really describe anything. We were just like, yeah, like this, you know, like we just didn't know shit.
Being yourself.
Yeah, we were being too much of ourselves, where like it really didn't help like a customer being like, no, Liam, I'm trying to figure out what it smells like. I'm like, no, just buy the Hermes. Like it'd be really cool. Like he's a dope guy. So we've definitely matured, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the easiest part is the relatability aspect. And I think anytime we're working on like a problem or like working on packaging design and stuff, we're like, we write something and it just sounds like, Kevin could attest, like it just sounds super sterile. And we're like, all right, dude, like stop. Like we gotta be less boring and just be ourselves, right? Rather than being like, this will be good and safe.
Right.
So yeah, I think that those help our marketing initiatives in terms of just like being relatable.
Sure. Wow. Okay. So you founded this in 2018, right?
Yeah. Our 5th birthday was just 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Gosh, 5 years in business.
5 years in business, 2 years full time. So I was at that. Okay. I was at that startup 2 years. Yeah, for full 4 years. And then I was able to take it full time 2 years ago.
Okay. So I just want to touch on your role as CEO within the business, your co-founder as well. How do you guys divide up responsibilities for the most part?
Yeah. So he's actually going full time starting on Monday. So which is crazy. Yeah. Which I'm stoked about. And so he's the CMO. I'm the CEO. He's definitely on like more obviously what it sounds like. Email marketing, paid marketing, performance marketing, overall marketing strategy. Creative, things like that. The issue is that like we both love to do those things. So it's nice that this year I'm maturing as a CEO where I could like outsource things that I don't want to do. Not that I don't want to do, but that we kind of overlap too much. I'm definitely operations, finance, overall vision, strategy, everything. And then the fun shit is marketing, right? Like we love that.
Sure.
And I never want to disassociate from it, but like, that's why we hired Kevin, who's behind the camera. Our first employee, shout out. And Grant. And like, I think us having unique responsibilities, but we all intersect in areas that we all enjoy, is I think a good dynamic.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll get to, I'm just, because we're on this topic, do you have, I want to ask you about this later, but plans to grow the team? Are you hoping to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we're a 7-figure business. And us 3, I think we could very much like expand our own duties and responsibilities and really just like hone into them and be even more efficient. I got burned at my first startup with like headcount, right? Because like you scale or you die.
Right.
We make our rules, right? We're completely bootstrapped and funded by ourselves. Yeah. So like that is a flag in the ground that I'm so fucking grateful of.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And like it's cool that like I'll talk to another founder who's raised. I won't name you. But you know who you are. But he's like, dude, I'm so envious, like of that you don't have like an investor texting you or like breathing down your neck or doing quarterly like calls and meetings. Like it's awesome that we control our own destiny, and I'd rather live and die by that any day.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so I want to transition into challenges you've experienced over the past 5 years in building this thing, and more so on the entrepreneurial side. So if you're able to answer this question of like what's been the biggest challenges, it can be general, it can be a specific thing you went through. Could you share that story or what you've learned from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can give it to you in two parts again. I think one of the most challenging things was like you just not knowing how to do anything.
Yeah.
Really.
This comes up a lot, by the way.
Yeah. I think obviously Thomas on his podcast with you have said it, but like I say this all the time.
Sure.
Like in order to be a successful founder, like you need to be naive as hell. Like if I knew everything that I had to go through to get to where we're at right now, I definitely wouldn't have jumped, right? I've been like, oh, that sounds like the hardest thing you've probably ever done. And I think a lot of people get into that. You'll see a podcast or something show up on your phone and like, you'll get the hoorahs and like oh, I was like down to my last dollar. It's
right.
like, yeah, I mean like that is real.
Yeah.
Like, and it does get super real. I think you having the maturity and you honestly just focusing your brain power on things, has certainly been like a revelation I've had recently. So me understanding and really focusing my brain in a way that like, could hopefully impact the business as well as like my psyche. Because like one of the most difficult and challenging things is as an entrepreneur is that you deal with the hardest parts, right?
Yeah.
Like you're like, it's awesome to be an employee. But like when shit hits a fan, like it's on you, right? And I'd never had that responsibility before.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of my problems are like big problems like that, like that you were pretty much the only person to fix. Which has been kind of like new to me. And so like just dealing with that has come with a set of challenges, but like I'm just even privileged to be in the situation I'm in, right? Like pressure is a privilege. Being a founder is a privilege. Like this is great that I get to be on a podcast call with you and like not have to worry about paying my rent, you know? It's like, it's awesome that I could have these experiences and be grateful of where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, just to answer your question in a shorter form is like, I didn't know how to do anything, right? Like, how do I source materials? How do I make packaging? Like, how do I market, right? Like, how do I make a website? Like all the things that you see that Guy Fawkes has, whether it be the website, which I designed, whether it be like our packaging, which I pretty much designed, like all these things that like fragrances, like obviously with the help with them, it's like, you have to do a lot of things. And those are the things that I always tell other entrepreneurs to do. It's like, dude, get your hands really dirty and know how to do everything. Like, why not? You know? And so, yeah, it's been crazy. But yeah, I would say those things. If hopefully that wasn't too long.
No, that's great. I mean, it's so interesting because this comes up a lot where if people actually knew what they were getting themselves into, they probably wouldn't ever start in the first place. And it sounds like when you just dive into it and then you realize, holy shit, I'm in with the wolves here. I don't know what's around the corner. You gain confidence every time you turn each of these corners, right? When you figure something out and then you try it. And even though there are so many more things ahead that you don't know, that the unknowns, right, in front of you. And you continue to go through these and figure it out regardless of how hard it might be each time. That's what continues to give you the confidence at the certain point of being an entrepreneur where you say, hey, I'm ready for anything. Is that a fair way to describe that growth? Yeah,
absolutely. I think that particular point always like in my brain visualizes like a boxer, you know, like you're definitely going to get punched in the mouth and it's just kind of how you counter. And it like you normalize it, right? Like, like we'll have something go wrong probably tomorrow and I'll be like, oh great, that cost us $30,000. Hopefully not that crazy, like knock on wood, but like just things like that where like that would completely put me in a panic like 6 months ago, you know, like so it's I would say those like rolling with the punches, I think the cliche is there and very righteous to be there. Like you just get so like calloused and you kind of have a way to almost like a framework where you have a problem and then you maybe fester on it for a little while and then hopefully you reach a resolution accordingly. And I think that's all about business. And I think that's definitely the hardest part and things that keep me up at night. I mean, to be completely honest. But like, it's kind of what we signed up for, right?
Sure. What is the next big thing you're trying to accomplish right now in the business? What do you focus most on to take Guy Fawkes to the next level? Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the things that we want to focus on for next year are definitely honing in like our existing processes and our supply chain, really. We kind of have that down. We're like doing new packaging, all these things. I would say on a high level, our two biggest things is being really good online and being really good for wholesale. And so that's kind of a majority of our business is like,
how do we focus this two-headed dragon in a way that we could just kind of scale appropriately? There's a lot of things online that we could do better, whether that be paid or whether it be different channels. And then wholesale, like, we're so new to it. We're almost in 200 stores nationwide, kind of by, like, not just being there, like, we obviously worked on it, but, like, that's a very, very profitable arm for us that, like, this year is probably a majority of our business. So it's like, us scaling in retail is huge for us. And that is exactly what we want to do next year. All the while we just build out our digital, like, since we're a digital first company, it's like, it's a privilege to, like, have everything dialed, right? You'd be surprised how many companies there are in retail that, like, don't have a really good online presence.
Sure.
So attacking both of those two things and just scaling, not even as necessary. Obviously we want to be big and we want to be a household name, but, like, in a really good, profitable, like, healthy way where we're not pulling out our hair.
Right. Okay. So you brought up a question I have now about your retail presence in these stores. You said 200 different stores, right? A big part of the experience that is linked to your brand is having this box sent out, right?
Yeah.
In the digital first strategy, where people have a few different samples and they can order the bottle that they like.
Yeah.
So what does that experience translate to when people walk into a store and they see Guy Fawkes? And then what types of stores are you guys in?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a juxtaposition, really, right? Why we started. I think we stumbled into wholesale pretty as anything. If there's anything that we should take from this is, like, just be naive as hell. And, like, I was like, yeah, like a store wanted to carry us, or I cold walked into a store in SF.
Good for you.
That's what happened twice. And so 2 different stores, and we got into them. And I remember when I was laying out the product, someone walked in and bought it, like, while I was there.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. Like, I think I just got chills. And I was like, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I've spent so long online trying to get one guy to buy a cologne. I was like, it was just that easy in person.
Wow.
Which was I actually forgot about that story until I just said it right now. But I was like, dang, this could be really, really sweet for us to do.
That's cool.
So I think our online presence really fuels our wholesale presence. So, like, you see an ad, great. If you don't buy us online, all good. Guess what? We're probably in your neck of the woods or 30 miles away from a major city or within a major city. That's kind of our main goal. It's, like, really focusing on core areas that you see an ad, great. You're outside of Atlanta, awesome. We're going to be in Atlanta, right? So it's like, I think that omni-channel approach is really, that halo effect for both of them is incredible.
Yeah.
Or you see us in a store, and then you get an ad and you're like, oh shit, yeah, I smelled that. Like, I would love to buy this or get the starter kit. So I don't want to buy one bottle and be glued to it, like, experience it. So I think they're just both, like, a cool brother and sister, really. That is just, in my brain, like, just a no-brainer of why we should be focusing our time, energy, and money on.
Sure. Yeah, I love that story of when you were laying it out in the store and then somebody came and bought it.
Yeah,
and you got chills.
It was
from
wild.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were probably so focused on this idea of the experience that you offer online.
Yeah.
And that's your thing, right? But then wait, you're seeing success somewhere else that you didn't even plan for, right?
100%.
So that's definitely speaks to, I think, your branding and your marketing, because something stands out about how you guys make it look, how it makes people feel, and that's amazing. And just like I said earlier, looking at your online presence for Guy Fawkes, everything, it's very well done.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, that was just us.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's so funny when I get a little jaded when it comes to, like, other brands when they're like, yeah, we hired this marketing agency. I'm like, dude, where are you getting your money from?
Yeah.
Like, I think hopefully you can kind of elicit that on your podcast show of other founders. It's like, all right, dude, like, let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
Like, how did you afford that? You know, like, and I think with Guy Fawkes, like, our level of frugality has been amazing in terms of just, like, because we had no other option. So, like, yesterday on Twitter, it was like, I was following this one guy, and he was like, yeah, I just don't see in any world where you don't need to be first sale profitable. And I was like, bro, what the fuck? Like, you're planning on hopefully having that person come back months from now. I'm like, no, you should totally be first sale profitable. Like, what are we doing here? Like, if you're not, and obviously there's different business cases for that, but, like, that's the old school way of e-com. And luckily I come from the old school way of e-com, and, like, that's not going to work, or, like, that whole strategy doesn't work in today's society in terms of meta, like, pricing and paid ads. So, like, it's cool that, like, we just did that because, like, we had to. And now that's, like, in vogue.
That's so cool. Okay, so I want to end this with a signature question that I ask every entrepreneur. And it's, what is an entrepreneurial life hack that is against the mainstream belief that's unique to you, you can share with the audience? And keep in mind, the audience is, all different types of people, but people who are interested in entrepreneurship. I have entrepreneurs of all different types on here. So is there anything that you can speak to from your experience?
Yeah, for sure. To distill it into one particular thing, I think hustle culture is crazy.
Yeah.
And like just the level of comparability that you have with like maybe other companies and people. It's definitely been something I'm 31. And so like it's been definitely something weighing on my brain for a little while. And I would say like the biggest thing is just like get your mind right. And I focus like meditate and like journal and you name it. All those maybe more in vogue things as well. But no, I think that's super real because it gives me like a good idea of where I want to take the company and where I want to take myself personally. So yeah, hustle culture, like working 80 hours a week, like, I mean, cool, do that, bro, if you want to do it. But like, nah, like how about you just get smart about where you focus your time, energy, and money on, and then hopefully not burn yourself out. Because like, what's the point of burning yourself out if you're working for yourself? It's like that's a juxtaposition and a paradox in its own right. So yeah, I mean, like enjoy it. Like I think that's the biggest thing too. And I'm guilty of not enjoying it. I'm guilty of like being in the minutia of like the day to day and worrying about packaging with Kevin. But like, I very much think like you understanding your own brain and then focusing your time and energy and money on things that you could really make an impact on. I think that's the biggest thing rather than you just toiling around on your laptop for 80 hours a week.
I love it, man. That's awesome. Man, well, amazing story. I think it's so cool how you've differentiated this brand in this unique category of cologne and candles and all these different scents and how you market it. Very interesting to hear how you came up with these ideas and how you've put it into action, how you've put this operation into real life. And clearly it's successful. And I think it's amazing how you pretty much self-funded this thing, right? Yeah.
No, it's been a ride, man. Obviously what I talked to you about and hopefully like your listeners could understand is like, I think one of the biggest things is just having like imposter syndrome, right? Like I haven't been on a podcast in 4 years since I started because I was like, you haven't done anything, right? And so like, I think it was like kind of a cool like moment for you to like reach out to me directly. And I was like, dude, no, you could totally, like you have insight to share to people that hopefully could not even necessarily inspire, but like help just in some capacity. And I think that's what we lack in this day and age of like, we have a lot of people telling us and we're consuming a lot of content for people that we really shouldn't. And I think just like understanding like, hey, you actually have, real things to say and hopefully offer advice rather than being like sign up for my course. It's like I think that's just real, man. I think that's the biggest thing about this world is just being real. And obviously with your own journey, I think that's super exciting. And hopefully like I'm a small little like drop in your big bucket.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's again, hearing your story is amazing, and I can't wait to continue to follow you and see the success. Is there anyone in your network on the entrepreneur side who you would recommend that I could also have on the show? Absolutely.
I'll get you in contact with either of them. But Faraz, who's my boy, he's the CEO of Mansion, which is like you've probably seen him. They're like a cool accessory brand. They have like chains and bracelets and stuff. And then my other homie, Zach, from In Good Taste. They're from SF too, but he lives here. Both of them live in San Diego.
Nice.
He has a direct-to-consumer wine company.
Oh, solid.
Who they're in Target and stuff. They're awesome. So
cool.
Either of those two dudes are smarter than me. Really, really good guys. So happy to get you in contact.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. I'll follow up on those.
Got you.
Dude, Liam, thanks so much, man. What a cool conversation and cool story. Guys, how can people find you online? How can people become a customer of Guy Fawkes?
Yeah, guyfawkes.com. Follow us on Instagram at guyfawkesco on everything. My own personal handle is Liam Kicks. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Use promo code. Actually, if this comes out before Black Friday, 20% off the entire store. So our biggest sale.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll make sure to get everyone on board with that.
Yeah.
Save some cash. I'm gonna have to get something myself too.
No, we got you. I was actually gonna give you this.
All right, Liam. Thanks, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
I got you set up.
Thank you for joining our conversation today on the Nichols and Dimez Show. Please check out and follow my podcast Instagram at nicholsanddimezshow. I'd love to have you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube. You can also find it on my website. I welcome and encourage any feedback you can share in the reviews so I can continue to improve and develop the show. Thanks again, and see you next time.